The sun dipped low over the city skyline, casting long shadows as Mark parked his sleek black sedan in front of the Grand Hotel. With its marble facade and shimmering awnings, the hotel stood as a beacon of luxury, a promise of elegance wrapped in the bustle of everyday life. Mark stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks and smoothing down his tailored suit. Today was a day of change, and he could feel it in the air. As he walked through the revolving doors, a wave of cool air greeted him, mixing with the scent of fresh flowers arranged in the lobby. He glanced around, noting the ornate chandeliers and gleaming floors. Yet beneath that polished surface, Mark felt a flicker of uncertainty. Even now, he couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that this day was more than just another business trip. Sang the receptionist, her bright smile contrasting sharply with the gloomy day outside. Mark hesitated for a moment before responding. Yes, Mark Robinson. The receptionist's fingers danced across her keyboard, however her bright smile suddenly faltered. I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson, but it looks like there's been a mistake. Your reservation was… Mark's voice rose slightly and he felt the stares of other guests nearby. I booked it last week. She shrugged apologetically. I'm really sorry. Sometimes things happen with credit cards or bookings. Mark could feel his heart hammering in his chest. He had been preparing for this meeting for 3 weeks. This was more than just a business trip. It was a chance to secure the future of his fledgling startup. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. Look, can you please check again? I really need to be here. The receptionist's fingers tapped on the keyboard again, but the look on her face didn't change. I'm afraid there are no rooms available, she said, her tone unwavering. Frustration bubbled up inside him. Other guests casually chatted, oblivious to his struggle. Mark felt invisible, like he was fading into the backdrop of all their comfortable conversations. No, you don't understand. I have to be here, he insisted, his voice low now but tinged with desperation. Let me see what I can do, she said finally, but without much hope in her eyes. As she turned her attention to the screen again, Mark's gaze fell to the ornate carpet. His thoughts swirled. He wasn't just another businessman. He had come to prove himself, to change the narrative of his life. Just then, the elevator doors opened with a quiet ding, drawing his eye to the polished bellhop who stepped out. He was tall, with an air of confidence that seemed to command every corner of the lobby. Clad in a sharp uniform, with a crisp white glove salute that shone with professionalism, he looked every bit the part of a man who knew his worth. The bellhop approached the reception desk, his gaze sweeping across the lobby before locking onto Mark for a brief moment. There was something different about him, as if he exuded a power that made everyone around him just a touch more alert. Excuse me, sir, Mark interrupted, desperation creeping into his voice once again as he turned toward the bellhop. The bellhop raised an eyebrow and stepped closer, listening intently. My reservation was declined, and I'm trying to figure out a way to stay here for a critical meeting, Mark explained. Each word felt heavier than the last. The bellhop nodded, his blue eyes sparkling with intrigue. Turning toward the receptionist, he whispered something inaudible before she shot a startled look at Mark. The bellhop continued, his voice steady. Mark fumbled through his briefcase, a mix of hope and anxiety welling inside him. Handing over his ID felt like handing over a piece of his future. The bellhop took it with careful fingers and examined it closely. There was a moment of silence, thick with anticipation. Then, as if an unseen doorway had swung open, the bellhop smiled warmly. The receptionist, clearly flustered, watched the whole exchange but didn't dare to interrupt. A sudden tension filled the room, the kind that crackled with unspoken promise. Mark's heart raced, hope fluttering in his chest like a trapped bird. With an assured stride, the bellhop led Mark toward a side door. Follow me, sir. As they walked, Mark's mind raced. Who was this bellhop, and how could he have so much authority in this grand hotel? Each step felt like a leap toward something great, or something that had been just out of reach. They reached a grand executive suite on the penthouse level. With a flourish, the bellhop unlocked the room and swung the door open. Here you are, Mr. Robinson, he announced with a formal bow. Mark stepped inside, his breath catching in his throat. The suite was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows framed breathtaking views of the city. Luxurious furnishings promised comfort, and even the gentle hum of the air conditioning felt like a sigh of relief enveloping him. Still awed, Mark turned to thank the bellhop, but he was just standing there, arms crossed, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You may want to check your laptop for your meeting details. You did, Mark stammered. How had this bellhop done all of this so seamlessly? I know how important these moments can be, he replied, his voice steady and reassuring. Mark's heart raced with gratitude. He hadn't even considered that he might need Wi-Fi to access his documents. It was all so simple, yet he had been caught up in the chaos of uncertainty. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. The bellhop tipped his hat in response and started to step back toward the door. Remember, mister, and with that he walked away, leaving Mark alone in his suite, overwhelmed and grateful. Mark set his briefcase on the polished desk and opened his laptop. The connection was swift, and as he logged into his accounts, he couldn't help but replay the bellhop's words in his mind. Push, it felt true not just for this moment, but for his life. The meeting was set to begin in 15 minutes. He paced the room, glancing out the window at the busy streets below. People were hustling, moving, living their lives, each with their own challenges and victories. His heart swelled with anticipation, and he felt a newfound strength bubbling within him. This wasn't just about business, it was about fighting for his dreams against all odds. As the time ticked closer, he composed himself. Standing in the middle of the suite, he imagined success. He imagined himself delivering a powerful presentation, people nodding, interested, engaged. It was easy to picture the future he had always dreamed of. The minutes slipped by, and before he knew it, it was time. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and stepped out of the suite. The lobby was buzzing with energy as guests came and went. Mark entered, feeling the pulse of the crowd. Remembering the bellhop's confidence, he held his head high. He approached the elevator and pressed the button, waiting for it to arrive. But before the doors opened, he caught a glimpse of a group gathered near the entrance. They looked serious, faces drawn with lines of worry. He hesitated, heart twisting. In that moment, he realized he could turn away and focus on his meeting, or he could offer help where he could, even if it was just a simple kindness. Mark straightened and walked toward the group. He asked, genuine concern in his voice. They turned, startled at the unexpected offer. One woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Mark felt that familiar stirring in his chest, the impulse to help. "Here, let me call for a car for you," he said, his fingers already reaching for his phone. He dialed a ride-share service as they shared their situation, and within moments, a vehicle was on its way. The expressions on their faces shifted from worry to gratitude as they realized help had arrived. Thanking him profusely, they soon rushed off just as Mark's own car pulled up for him. As he climbed inside, he felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had stepped outside his own concerns for just a moment, and in doing so, created a little ripple of positivity. The drive to the meeting felt different, charged with purpose. The kind of energy that comes from making a choice to be the kind of person you always aspired to be. Mark arrived at the venue, more prepared than ever for the challenge ahead. He stepped out, confidence radiating as he approached the doors to the conference room. Everything he had gone through that day, the setback, the unexpected help, and the small act of kindness had forged a stronger version of himself. With each determined step he took, he felt like not just a businessman, but a man who could change his own narrative. He remembered the bellhop with gratitude, knowing that even in the grand theater of life, we're all just looking for that little push to get us to where we need to be. Evelyn stood behind the sleek glass counter of the upscale hotel, her fingers lightly dancing over the keyboard, heart racing. The lobby buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft sounds of a piano floating in from the lounge. It was a scene straight out of a movie, yet she felt a knot tightening in her stomach. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, looking across the counter at the tall man, impeccably dressed in a navy suit. His blue eyes were stormy, full of an urgency that made her pulse quicken. "Declined," the word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. She watched as disappointment flickered across his face. He had the kind of energy that filled the room, the kind of man you noticed, but in that moment he was just another traveler caught in the gears of an unfortunate mistake. He pressed, voice low but edged with incredulity. "I booked this 3 days ago." Evelyn glanced back at her screen, her heart pounding. She could see his reservation, yes, but the details were fuzzy like a dream fading too quickly upon waking. "I understand," she said gently, trying to keep the sharpness from her tone. But the payment went through, then reversed. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration etched across his features. "This is unacceptable. I need this room for an important meeting," he insisted. Evelyn could feel the restlessness of the guests around her. They were oblivious to the tension brewing in front of them while she stood there, helpless. She could see him weighing his options. It was just a room. Why did it feel like so much more? What she didn't know was how this single moment would set the course for the evening. Just as she began to concoct an apology, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Out stepped a bellhop, his crisp uniform perfectly pressed, skillfully avoiding a precarious stack of luggage as he moved toward the front desk, the light glinting off the brass button on his chest like a beacon. He asked, his voice steady as he focused on the tall man before turning slightly toward Evelyn. "I am sorry, but this guest's reservation was declined, and we have no empty rooms available," Evelyn explained, her hands clasped nervously. The bellhop's gaze shifted to the man, a flicker of acknowledgement passing between them. He asked, gesturing toward the reservation details on the screen, a quiet confidence radiating from him. There was something about him that felt commanding, as if he was used to offering solutions rather than excuses. "I'd really appreciate it," the tall man replied, his body language softening as he stepped closer to the counter. The bellhop nodded, leaning in to see the screen. Evelyn felt a slight tug of hope at the corners of her mind as she watched the man lean forward, his posture relaxed and attentive. The inquiry felt instinctual. It was almost as if the air had shifted and a new possibility had emerged. The bellhop studied the screen for a moment before turning his attention back to the agitated guest. "I recognize your name." "Sure, I'm from Archon Industries," he replied, his voice steadier now. The bellhop held the man's gaze, a glint of understanding passing between them. Mark, for that was the tall man's name, watched in disbelief as the bellhop took a step back, tapping on the screen while exuding an air of command. The wheels of his mind were turning, and just watching him was enough to assuage some of Mark's earlier anxiety. "Wait here," the bellhop said, and with that he strode away, weaving through guests and staff alike, disappearing out of sight. Mark turned to Evelyn, his eyes softening as he sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Evelyn smiled faintly, suddenly recognizing the unexpected flicker of hope that now colored the moment. "He's one of our best," she said. As they waited, Mark checked his watch, tapping his foot in impatience. Every second felt like an eternity. The pressure of a significant opportunity hovered over him like an unshed storm cloud. He could almost picture the board members leaning back in their chairs, evaluating him, weighing the merit of his ideas. A few moments later, the bellhop reappeared, walking swiftly, a determined look set on his face. "Good news," he announced, looking directly at Mark. "I was able to pull some strings. There's a suite available after all." Mark blinked in stunned disbelief, his heartbeat quickening with each word. "Really? Always," the bellhop replied, a confident grin lighting up his face. As they made their way through the winding hallways of the hotel, Mark's heart swelled with gratitude. This wasn't just about securing a room anymore. It felt more monumental, symbolizing a shift toward something bigger in his life. Mark asked, trying to bridge the gap between them as they walked. "Several years," the bellhop replied, maintaining a steady pace. "I've learned a lot about creating solutions. It's all about the little details, you know." Mark nodded appreciatively, absorbing the words like a nourishing breeze. It was true. He had spent so much time focusing on the destination that he had almost forgotten the journey along the way. Once they reached the suite, the bellhop opened the door, revealing a breathtaking view of the city sprawling beneath them, lights twinkling like stars under a darkening sky. The room was immaculate, with plush furnishings that invited relaxation. "Wow," Mark breathed, stepping inside. It felt surreal, like he had stepped into a dream he had long since buried. The bellhop beamed as he stepped aside, allowing Mark to take it all in. "Make yourself at home." Mark felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. It wasn't just the room, it was what it represented: a chance, a door swinging wide open after being so frustratingly closed. "Thank you," he said, sincerity pouring from him. "It's my pleasure," the bellhop replied, tipping his hat slightly. "Just remember, it's important to seize moments like these." With that, the bellhop turned to leave, but Mark stopped him, heart racing. "Wait, Ethan," he replied, turning back with a warm smile. "Ethan?" Mark echoed, the name settling in his mind as he realized how much this encounter had shifted his entire trajectory for the day. Ethan nodded as he disappeared, leaving Mark standing alone in his suite, gazing out over the city. He took a moment to breathe in deeply, the crisp air filling his lungs. Time slipped away as he prepared for the meeting, going over every detail he had honed in his mind. There was a rhythm to it all, each word articulated like notes played on a grand piano. He could almost see the board members' faces as he spoke, their expressions shifting based on the weight of his ideas. As he entered the presentation room, he could feel the tension in the air, a palpable energy filled with anticipation. The faces of the board members welcomed him, but there was also that familiar air of skepticism. He was new to the scene, and he knew he had to wow them. Mark stood at the front, introduced himself, and began, letting his passion spill out like sunlight. He weaved through charts and ideas, articulating his vision for the future of their app. The room felt alive as he gestured, fed off the energy of the moment, each word solidifying his confidence. He felt in control, buoyed by the support of unexpected kindness from earlier in the day. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, and relieved laughter filled the air. "Thank you," he breathed, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. The board members exchanged impressed glances. "That was quite a pitch, Mark," one of them declared. A tide of relief washed over him. As they talked through details, he felt the once daunting pressure turn into a remarkable sense of possibility. The world didn't seem as big as it had moments before. After the meeting, he hurried back to the lobby, eager to find Ethan. He needed to share his gratitude. The man had shifted the course of his day and maybe even his life, but when he reached the front desk, he found Evelyn there, still typing away with a look of deep concentration. Mark asked, barely able to contain his excitement. "He's on a break," she said, glancing up. Mark nodded, his thoughts racing. He could hardly wait to share the news of how well everything had gone. He leaned against the counter, waiting, feeling a spring in his step. Other guests milled about, some checking in, others checking out, but to him they were just background noise to the melody of his success. Finally, Ethan strode into the lobby, his presence instantly drawing Mark's attention. He approached him, nearly bouncing with energy. Ethan turned to him, surprise lighting up his features. "Mark, unbelievably well, I think we have a deal." Each word felt significant, marking the turning point in his journey. Ethan smiled, not necessarily for the praise, but for the knowledge that he had contributed to someone's victory. Mark felt something swell inside him, gratitude, yes, but also a sense of connection. "It's all part of the experience," Ethan replied warmly. Mark reflected on those words, realizing the truth embedded within them. He had learned more than just a professional lesson today. he had learned about kindness, resilience, and the power of human interaction. As they stood there, two lives temporarily intertwined by chance, the world felt a little less daunting. Mark had entered the hotel as a man with a broken reservation and a sinking heart, but he was leaving with not just a successful pitch, but a newfound understanding of the simple but vital connections that shape our lives. In that moment, nothing seemed impossible. And he knew from here on out he would carry that lesson with him, always seeking those little pushes to make life into something magnificent. The words hung in the air, chilled and stark against the bustling warmth of an elegant hotel lobby. Olivia, the receptionist, looked up at the tall, sharply dressed man standing before her, his face pale, disbelief washing over him like a cold wave. He asked, letting a mix of confusion and frustration seep into his voice. Olivia glanced at her screen again, willing it to show a different story. She was new at the job, barely a few weeks in, and already the weight of the world seemed to rest on her shoulders. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said, her voice steady but firm. "It appears that your card was declined during the final check." His blue eyes flashed with anger, and Olivia felt her heart race. She had encountered plenty of unhappy customers, but this one felt different, like a storm brewing beneath the surface. He said, his frustration rising. Olivia could feel the room closing in on her. Guests lounged around, drinks in hand, some enjoying soft music in the background, yet here she stood, caught in a crossfire of disappointment and anxiety. "I truly understand," but before she could finish, a sharp ding echoed through the lobby as the elevator doors slid open. Out stepped a bellhop, dressed immaculately in his uniform, a white-gloved salute at the ready. He strode over, posture perfect, an air of confidence radiating from him. He asked, his gaze piercing right through the tension. "This guest's reservation was declined," Olivia said, glancing at the tall man, unsure how this would unfold. The bellhop focused entirely on the guest, his demeanor shifting from casual observer to a source of support. "Mark Carson," he replied, desperation creeping into his voice. The bellhop echoed the name, letting it roll off his tongue like a well-worn phrase. "I've come across you before." Mark's shoulders eased slightly, as if drawn by an invisible thread of connection. "I'm pitching a new app to several investors." The bellhop nodded knowingly, then turned toward Olivia. Mark blinked in surprise, glancing between the two of them. "Let's see what we can do," the bellhop said. With that, he motioned for Mark to follow him, striding confidently toward the back of the hotel lobby, leaving Olivia momentarily stunned. As they walked, Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him in waves. The bellhop walked with purpose, and each footstep felt firm and reassuring. Mark asked, curious as they moved through the hallway lined with plush textiles. "Ethan," the bellhop replied, maintaining his pace. "Just Ethan?" Mark asked, intrigued by the man's confidence. "It's simple, really," Ethan paused. "People need a solution, not an excuse. I see faces, not just names." Mark absorbed those words, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. "Exactly," Ethan said, his eyes sparkling with passion. "Every interaction is an opportunity to alter a course, to create something different." They reached a secure office space at the back of the hotel. Ethan knocked lightly and pushed open the door, revealing a staff member seated inside. "Can we make an exception?" The staff member appeared skeptical, eyeing them both. "Is there any way to—" "Yes," Ethan cut him off. "The man has an urgent situation, and we can't let him down." The tension in the air thickened. Mark held his breath, felt a storm of uncertainty swirling within him. Would they find a room, and would it really help? His career rested on the precipice, and this felt like an urgent lifeline. After a brief pause, the staff member sighed. "All right, Ethan, you know what you're doing," he conceded, tapping on his keyboard. As the process unfolded, Mark felt disbelief creeping into his heart, disbelief slowly melting into gratitude as Ethan took charge. "It'll just be a moment," Ethan said, offering Mark a reassuring smile. It was hard for Mark to grasp what was happening. Moments before he had been lost in confusion, but now, with Ethan's guidance, everything felt different. Maybe there was hope after all. "Often we feel helpless in situations like this," Ethan said softly, eyes focused on Mark, fully engaged. "But you have the power to shape your circumstances." Mark reflected on that. He had been so focused on the weight of his aspirations that he had forgot how to adapt, how to navigate unexpected turns. A wave of determination began to wash over him. Suddenly, the staff member slid the key card across the desk toward Mark, a shiny silver beacon. "You're all set, room 403, Mark exclaimed, a grin splitting his face. "It's about being proactive," Ethan reminded him. "Always be on the lookout for ways to convert mishaps into something positive." Mark took the key, gratitude swelling inside him. "You changed my day, Ethan." Ethan stepped back, adjusting his crisp uniform. "It's my job, and it's what I love to do." With a renewed sense of purpose, Mark rushed down the hallway, energized now, thoughts racing as he stepped into the elevator. The chrome doors slid shut, shutting out doubt and anxiety. He pressed the button for the 4th floor, and as he ascended, the weight of the world didn't feel like an anchor anymore. It felt like a launching pad. Arriving at his suite, he opened the door to find a luxurious room filled with natural light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Mark stepped inside, letting the beauty of it wash over him. The view of the city was breathtaking. He could already envision himself achieving his dreams from this vantage point. He took a moment to breathe, shifting gears from uncertainty to focus. He prepared his presentation, sifting through notes while envisioning the board members' responses. With every stroke of his pen, he felt a connection to his passion, reigniting the fire in his gut. After what felt like mere moments, the time for his meeting had arrived. Mark stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie, taking in a deep breath as he made his way back to the elevator. He wasn't just going to present, he was going to own the room. Descending to the lobby filled him with anticipation. As the elevator doors opened, he stepped out into the vibrant atmosphere where conversations flowed. And there near the reception desk, he saw Ethan, engaged with other guests but still maintaining an air of poise. Mark called out, rushing over. Ethan turned, smile breaking across his face. Yes. As Mark moved through the lobby toward the conference room, he lifted his chin higher. Each step was a statement, a commitment to himself and to the opportunity ahead. Today would not just be another day, it was the day things would change. Inside the conference room, the board members waited, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Mark took a breath and stepped forward, exuding the confidence he had gained from his earlier encounter with Ethan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, Mark began, his voice clear and strong. As he spoke, he could see the gradual shift in their expressions. Their eyes lit up with interest as he articulated his ideas, weaving through charts, projections, and vivid examples. It wasn't just about the app, it was about the possibilities it represented. Mark shared tales of inspiration and perseverance, threading personal stories into his pitch. He could almost see their doubts evaporating like morning mist in the sunlight. The conversation flowed, questions emerged, and Mark met each one with vigor and clarity. By the end of the presentation, he stood confidently, surveying the room. He could feel the energy shift. What had started as a daunting task burgeoned into collaboration and laughter. Thank you for your time, Mark, one of the board members said as applause filled the air. Relief washed over him like a warm tide, and the weight of anticipation lifted. He had done it. As he stepped out of the room, exhilaration coursed through him. There was a sense of accomplishment, the first building block laid toward his aspirations. He turned quickly, searching the lobby for Ethan, eager to share the news. Spotting him, Mark approached, bubbling with excitement. Ethan's smile widened and he clasped Mark by the shoulder. His words felt empowering, as if they held some magic that resonated with the moment. Thank you, really, Mark said, his voice sincere. You did the work. I just gave you a boost, Ethan replied, confidence brimming in his eyes. Mark nodded, absorbing the truth in Ethan's words. It wasn't just about the success of the meeting or the potential funding. It was about the connections they had forged along the way. In that moment, amidst the chatter of the busy lobby and the gleaming chandeliers, Mark realized how the most unexpected events could open doors, change trajectories, and create profound impacts, both professionally and personally. As they stood there, two lives intersected by chance, the world felt full of possibility. The hotel buzzed around them, a perfect backdrop to the lesson he had learned that day. That in every experience, both good and bad, there resides the potential for transformation. And with that, Mark knew he had not only stumbled onto a pivotal moment for his career, but had gained something deeper, a glimpse into the power of human connection, perseverance, and unwavering determination. A belief that the right push at the right moment could lead to beautiful changes. The words sliced through the bustling hotel lobby like a cold breeze. The air, thick with the sweet scent of expensive perfumes and mingled chatter, suddenly felt icy. Emma, the receptionist, looked up at the tall, sharply dressed man standing before her, his face a mask of confusion and disbelief. He echoed, his brow furrowing. That doesn't make any sense. Emma felt the weight of judgment from other guests milling about the lobby, sipping on their delicate cocktails. She'd been in her role for less than 3 months, and already she could feel the tension gearing up like an impending storm. I'm really sorry, sir. It appears there was an issue with your card. His frustration flickered into anger, and Emma fought the urge to shrink back. This is unacceptable. Do you know how important this meeting is? I can't just, sir, please, she interjected, her voice trembling slightly but firm. I completely understand. No, he said, the heat in his voice rising. I need to be here. She could see the desperation in his eyes as they darted around the lobby, searching for a solution that seemed just out of reach. Let me check again, she offered, trying to buy herself some time, her fingers racing over the keyboard. But the same frustrating message popped up, no available options. Before she could think, the elevator doors chimed open with a soft ding, and out stepped a bellhop, his uniform perfectly pressed, exuding confidence. With a quick salute, he turned to the commotion and approached the front desk. He asked, his voice calm and steady, casting a reassuring aura that seemed to envelop the area. Emma instinctively stepped aside, grateful for the distraction but aware of how little she could offer in a moment when everything felt overwhelming. The tall man had turned toward the bellhop now, desperation giving way to a flicker of hope. I'm Mark, he introduced himself, urgency lacing his words. Ethan, the bellhop, maintained eye contact with Mark, sensing the gravity of the situation. He leaned over Emma's shoulder, eyes scanning the screen. "I deal with all sorts of situations every day." Emma watched the two of them. Their energy shifted the room's mood from tension to possibility. As Ethan began asking questions, Mark's shoulders relaxed slightly and his initial frustration morphed into cautious optimism. Ethan asked, focused. "Archon Technologies," Mark replied. "I'm here to present a new project." "I understand," Ethan said, his tone embodying empathy. "Let's get you sorted out." With that, Ethan strode down the hall with purpose, leaving Mark standing there, processing the whirlwind of events. The tension that had gripped him moments before loosened its hold, the storm clouds in his mind starting to part. Mark asked Emma, gratitude weaving through his voice. She smiled, a flicker of pride in her department's staff. "He's the best." The minutes ticked by, even as the cacophony of the lobby continued. Mark checked his watch anxiously, feeling the weight of a future resting on the outcome of this day. A few moments later, Ethan reappeared, striding back with confidence, leading Mark right back to the desk. "Good news, Mark," he announced, the corners of his mouth curling up in a soothing smile. "There's a suite available." Mark blinked in disbelief. "You did?" Ethan nodded, handing him a key card. "Room 404. Just remember, it's all about turning challenges into opportunities." Mark took the card, disbelief knitting his brows together. "I can't thank you enough." "Don't mention it," Ethan replied, gesturing toward the elevator. As Mark stepped into the elevator, the weight on his shoulders began to lift. He pressed the button for the 4th floor, determination mixing with gratitude as he felt energized by Ethan's words. The doors slid open, and Mark emerged into an elegant suite that almost took his breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the city, the skyline glimmering in the late afternoon sun. Everything about the room felt right, the plush furniture, the spacious layout, the amenities that whispered luxury. "This is incredible," he said, his heart racing at the sight. He stepped inside and closed the door, taking a moment to breathe it all in. The earlier chaos was fading fast, replaced by a newfound energy and clarity. Unpacking his laptop, he set to work. This presentation was crucial. Every detail mattered. He spent the next 20 minutes fine-tuning his pitch, his nerves slowly turning into excitement. He envisioned the board members before him, apprehensive at first, but warming to his ideas as he brought them to life. Time slipped by swiftly, and before he knew it, he had 10 minutes to reach the conference room. He collected his things and quickly made his way back down to the lobby. He called out, searching the crowd. He spotted Ethan helping another guest. "I found the room." Ethan turned, a warm smile breaking through his focused demeanor. "I knew you would make it work." Mark grinned. "I really believe that. I wouldn't have made it without your help. Just remember to carry this momentum into your meeting," Ethan encouraged, an earnest look in his eyes. As Mark hurried toward the conference room, he felt a rush of determination flowing through him. The weight of anxiety morphed into confidence, igniting his ambition just before the big moment. Inside the boardroom, a sea of attentive faces awaited him. Mark's heart raced as he stepped forward, preparing to share his vision. Each member of the board wore an air of skepticism, but he was ready to dispel that uncertainty. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm eager to present to you a groundbreaking new app designed to transform user experience in our digital space," Mark began, his voice steady as he launched into his pitch. As he spoke, he felt a connection growing between him and the audience. He knew that if he laid out his ideas clearly, with passion and clarity, they would resonate. He wove stories about innovation, resilience, and the potential impact of his project, igniting excitement in the room. Mark noticed as the board members shifted in their seats, leaning forward, nodding slightly. Their skepticism melted away like snow under the sun, revealing curiosity and interest. He could feel the shifty energy of possibilities swirling like autumn leaves in the breeze. By leveraging emerging technologies, this app not only enhances user interaction but also predicts behaviors, making our services tailor-fit for our clients. "It's not just a tool, it's a revolution," he stated with conviction, connecting each point back to their mission. "You're painting a vivid picture here, Mark," one of the board members said, a glimmer of enthusiasm sparking in their eyes. With each question that arose, Mark felt more confident, eager to engage in a dialogue. Before long, he was deep into a dynamic discussion about implementation strategies and potential partnerships. When the meeting wrapped up, applause echoed in the room, a sound so satisfying it struck a chord deep within him. The board members exchanged glances, and Mark sensed it. The deal was closer to being sealed than ever before. "Congratulations, Mark," one of the members said as they wrapped up. "We're impressed with your passion and ideas." Mark walked out of that room feeling lighter, a wave of exhilaration surging through him as he remembered the nervous energy he'd felt not hours ago. He stopped by the reception on his way back to the lobby, spotting Ethan. "I did it," Mark exclaimed, unable to restrain his excitement. Ethan said, that calming smile still in place. "You trusted the process and look where it got you." "I truly appreciate everything you've done," Mark said, finding it hard to express just how impactful Ethan's presence had been that day. "Your support made all the difference." Ethan tipped his hat slightly, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. "Every encounter, every moment, those are the real treasures." Writing an opportunity off before realizing its value had nearly cost Mark everything. He took a step back to reflect on how unpredictable life could be, how the smallest twist could lead to moments that redefine everything. With newfound appreciation for the small things in life like the kindness of strangers and the connections forged through shared struggles, Mark left the hotel with a renewed sense of purpose. As he walked down the city streets, the sun gilding the buildings in shades of gold, he couldn't help but replay all the pieces that led him there. The fear, the uncertainty, and that unexpected moment in the lobby. At the heart of it all was Ethan, the bellhop who had turned a canceled reservation into a launching pad for opportunity, reminding him how significant a single gesture can be. In that moment, Mark not only envisioned a bright future for his startup, but also understood the essence of human connection. That with a little kindness, with the right push at the right time, anyone can navigate the stormy seas of life. And from then on, he vowed to carry Ethan's spirit with him, ensuring that every interaction he had would be a chance to uplift others, just as he had been lifted that day. In business and in life, he would always remember that change often begins with a single gesture of goodwill. The words hung in the air, cutting through the ambient noise of the bustling hotel lobby like a chilly breeze. Morgan, the receptionist, could see the shock in the tall man's eyes as he stood before her, his tailored suit and polished shoes contrasting sharply with the growing frustration on his face. He sighed, disbelief creeping into his voice. "I confirmed everything yesterday." The lobby was exquisitely decorated, chandeliers glittered overhead, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air, but all that elegance faded into the background as Morgan felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She was still new at this job, and her nerves had barely settled. Messing up someone's reservation felt like a personal failure. "I'm really sorry, sir," Morgan replied, her voice steady but edged with tension. He repeated, frustration boiling over in his tone. "This is unacceptable. I'm in town for a crucial business meeting, and I can't." Just before he could finish, the elevator doors opened with a chime, and out stepped a bellhop, his uniform immaculate and bearing the distinctive insignia of the hotel. He strode toward them confidently, his demeanor a perfect blend of professionalism and genuine concern. He asked, gazing directly at the man. There was a calmness in his presence, a subtle strength, as if he was used to managing chaos. "This guest reservation has been declined," Morgan explained, glancing at the bewildered man. "Mark Donovan," the tall man introduced himself, urgency lacing his words. "I'm supposed to be checked in right now." The bellhop nodded, his gaze flickering between Mark and Morgan. He leaned over the counter, focusing on the screen. Morgan felt both relief and anxiety coursing through her veins. This fellow was confident, and she silently hoped he could find a way to help. "I'll see what I can do," the bellhop said, pulling out a small notebook and jotting down notes. "Archon Technologies," Mark replied, his frustration softening ever so slightly. "We're developing a groundbreaking app." The bellhop straightened, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "Archon Technologies, I've heard of you guys." He turned to Morgan. Mark watched as the bellhop's professionalism permeated the air. He could feel the tension beginning to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope. "I'll be right back," the bellhop declared, striding confidently down a hallway, leaving Mark standing there, temporarily unsure of what might happen next. Mark thought, anxiety creeping back. He glanced around the lobby, taking notice of the luxury all around him. Suddenly, everything felt heavy. While on one hand he had the drive and ambition to succeed, the reality was that one misstep could derail everything he worked for. The minutes ticked by, and just when despair began to creep in again, the bellhop returned, a determined look on his face. "I found a suite for you," he said, striking Mark with disbelief. Mark asked, his heart racing. "With a little creativity and effort," the bellhop replied, flashing a confident smile. Mark took the key card that was offered to him, feeling grateful and energized. He sensed that a shift had occurred, that a new path had opened up before him. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with authenticity. "Anytime," the bellhop said, waving it off casually. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mark hurried to the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor. When the door slid open, he stepped into the suite, and his eyes widened at the luxury that surrounded him. The enormous windows revealed a stunning view of the city skyline, the sun casting golden hues over the buildings. This was it. This was his chance. As he settled in, setting up his laptop and reviewing his notes, every detail in the room reminded him why he fought so hard to reach this moment. With each word he typed, he envisioned how his presentation would unfold, how he would articulate the promises of his app, how he would bridge the gap between possibilities and reality. Time seemed to slip away, and suddenly he realized he had only 15 minutes left before he needed to head to the meeting. Mark shut his laptop and took a deep breath, allowing the adrenaline to rush through him. He felt ready, confident, and more determined than ever. Walking back to the elevator, he felt the weight of his ambition driving him forward. The doors glided open, and as he stepped into the lobby, he took a moment to soak in the ambience one last time. Mark called out, spotting the bellhop near the front desk. "Thank you again for everything." Ethan turned, looking pleased, and stepped toward him. Remember to own the room. Mark nodded, feeling the support radiate from Ethan. You've really helped me today. After exchanging a final nod, Mark walked to the conference room, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and excitement. He had prepared for this moment for weeks, and losing the reservation had only sharpened his desire to succeed. Inside the boardroom, he was met with straightforward expressions from the board members as they waited for him to begin. Mark took a deep breath, squeezing the key card in his pocket as he stepped forward. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I'm Mark Donovan from Archon Technologies, he began, steadying his voice. With each passing minute, he felt his nerves dissipate. Mark spoke with clarity, presenting his ideas animatedly. He highlighted the app's unique features, demonstrating how it would address real-world problems and build lasting connections between users. The board members' initial skepticism faded as their expressions shifted toward interest. Let's discuss the projected impact and growth opportunities, one of them said, leaning forward. Mark could feel the momentum shifting in his favor. The dialogue flowed, questions emerged, and Mark answered with confidence and insight. Each interaction felt alive, building a bridge between his vision and their expectations. As the meeting drew to a close, applause erupted in the room. Mark stood there, breathless and exhilarated. He could hardly believe he had done it. This was validation of his hard work, his sleepless nights, and the relentless drive that had propelled him forward. Congratulations, Mark. We see potential here, one of the board members said, extending his hand. As Mark left the conference room, a wave of elation washed over him. He couldn't help but think about how easily he could have been lost in discouragement if not for Ethan. It had been a small moment, just a conversation, yet it turned the tide in his favor. He found his way back to the lobby, searching for Ethan. When he spotted him brimming with enthusiasm, Mark rushed over. Ethan, they're interested. See, I told you, Ethan said, his smile genuine as he kept his composure. I owe this to you, Mark said, raising his hands in appreciation. I was so close to losing everything. Ethan shrugged, the humility evident in his demeanor. It's my job, but it's also a passion. Every guest's story matters. Mark felt his heart swell with gratitude. This wasn't just a story about business, there was a deeper lesson embedded in it all. Sometimes people can feel lost, but a small act of kindness can ignite a spark. As they talked, Mark realized how intertwined their paths had become. This encounter didn't just symbolize a successful business pitch, it represented a connection, a moment of vulnerability, and the power of support. Thank you for believing in me, for taking the time to help, Mark said, sincerity weaving through his words. This day will shape my future. Keep climbing, Mark, Ethan said as he gently clapped a hand on his shoulder. Mark nodded, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. He still had hurdles ahead, but today's success had fortified his belief in himself and his potential. As he stepped out of the hotel, the city sprawled before him, vibrant and full of life under the bright sun. The possibilities seemed endless, and he knew each day was a blank canvas, just waiting to be filled with the colors of his ambitions. With each step, he cherished the connections formed along the way, reminded that sometimes all it takes is a moment of empathy, a spark of belief, and the courage to seize the day. He would carry Ethan's words with him as a mantra, ensuring that he too would become a source of strength for someone else in need. In a world that often feels chaotic, Mark had learned how important it was to extend a hand, offer a smile, and believe in one another. With that thought guiding him, he walked confidently into the future. The words echoed in Jake's mind, slicing through the warm, bustling atmosphere of the hotel lobby. He stood there momentarily frozen, the air thick with the scent of fresh flowers and polished wood. The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes, looked apologetic as she repeated the words, but all he could focus on were his own thoughts spiraling out of control. Declined, Jake's voice trembled, the panic creasing his brow. He shifted from one foot to the other, aware of the elegantly dressed guests strolling past him, oblivious to his plight. I booked this room a week ago. I understand, she said softly, glancing momentarily back at her screen as if willing it to change, but the payment didn't go through. Jake clenched his fists, frustration bubbling up inside him. A tense knot formed in his stomach. Today was supposed to mark a pivotal moment in his life, a meeting that could secure vital investment for his startup. He couldn't afford to lose this opportunity. He implored, desperation spilling over. The receptionist shrugged, her helplessness mingling with sympathy. I'm really sorry. Just as Jake felt the weight of despair sinking in, the elevator doors slid open with a soft ding. Out stepped a bellhop, dressed sharply in a suit that suited him perfectly, his posture straight and confident. He surveyed the scene, then approached the desk, his presence cutting through the tension like a warm breeze. He asked, his voice smooth and assured. Her reservation was declined, the receptionist explained, her tone shifting, almost relieved at someone else stepping in. The bellhop, whose name tag read Ethan, looked directly at Jake. Jake Thompson, he replied, pinching the bridge of his nose as he fought to keep his composure. Ethan asked, his voice steady as if trying to peel back the layers of Jake's anxiety. I'm here for a meeting, an important one. I can't lose my accommodation, Jake replied, exasperation evident in his tone. Ethan nodded, gauging the situation. I see. He leaned in closer to the screen, and Jake watched a flicker of determination cross the bellhop's face. As Ethan began typing, Jake felt a new sense of hope rising within him. The atmosphere shifted as Ethan's confident presence enveloped the lobby. Something in the way he moved, the way he spoke, gave Jake the feeling that perhaps this day wasn't going to spiral completely out of control. Ethan asked, looking up. Jake scrambled through his phone, pulling up the email to show Ethan. Ethan perused the screen for a moment, then turned back to the receptionist. Let's run this through the system again. I might be able to find an alternative room. Jake felt his heart race, the flutter of hope mingling with uncertainty as Ethan worked his magic behind the desk. He glanced at the busy lobby, the laughter, the conversations, guests checking in, oblivious to his plight. Life continued around him, but within his chest, the storm swirled. Keep your chin up, Ethan said, glancing back at Jake, his voice full of encouragement. With renewed energy, Jake leaned into Ethan's calm assurance. Thank you. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Ethan's face brightened. I've got it, a luxury suite just opened up. Jake's breath caught in his throat, disbelief settling in. Absolutely, Ethan replied, flashing a smile that flickered warmth. Jake took a deep breath, gratitude pouring over him like sunlight breaking through rain clouds. Thank you so much, Ethan handed over the key card. Remember, it's not about the obstacles, it's about solving the problems. With the key card in hand, Jake felt lighter as he stepped into the elevator, quickly pressing the button for the 4th floor. As the doors closed, he smiled to himself, marveling at how quickly his luck had turned. Perhaps today wasn't fated to be a disaster after all. When he stepped out, the suite stretched out before him like a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the bustling city below, and the luxurious furnishings beckoned him to relax. In that moment, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, the tension of the past hour melting away. He set up his laptop and notes, feeling exhilarated. Every detail of his presentation flashed through his mind like the city lights outside his window. This was his time to shine, and he felt a surge of excitement. The earlier chaos had transformed into a catalyst for determination. Seconds turned to minutes, and before he knew it, he had less than half an hour until the meeting. Marking his place in preparation, he rallied his energy, pacing back and forth as he rehearsed his pitch in his mind. Everything felt so close, he could almost taste the victory. Finally, he settled down once more, taking a moment to soak in the view. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the buildings. Everything around him felt right, as if the universe was aligning in his favor for once. Now it was time for action. Mark exited the suite, making his way back to the lobby. He was filled with determination, thoughts racing. The boardroom awaited him. Stepping into the elevator, he pressed the button for the lobby, anticipation coursing through him. When the doors opened, he almost ran into Ethan, who was busy helping another guest. Jake felt the urge to share his excitement. Ethan turned, a warm smile breaking through his focused expressions. How's it going? I do. Just doing my job, Ethan replied, but his eyes reflected the belief he had in Jake. It's important that you follow through now. Jake nodded, feeling a sense of belonging and encouragement that had been absent for so long. I'll do my best. Good. Go on then, you've got this, Ethan said as Jake stepped toward the conference room where the pitch would take place. Inside, a long table filled with seasoned board members awaited him, eyes scanning the documents in front of them. Jake took a steadying breath and stepped forward. Good afternoon, everyone, he began, projecting his voice with a confidence that surprised even himself. As he dove deeper into his presentation, he felt the energy in the room shift. The board members leaned closer, engaging with his words. Jake illustrated the features of the app, painting the possibilities that stretched far beyond their current realities. He spoke passionately, moving through his slides with fluidity, sharing what drove him to create this app. Feedback flowed back and forth as he answered questions and countered doubts with clarity. The vision he had held onto so tightly for so long was finally taking shape in front of him. When he reached the conclusion of his pitch, he could feel the board members' eyes on him, their expressions evolving from curiosity to intrigue. Thank you for your time, Jake, one of them said, leaning forward. A surge of relief washed over Jake, mingling with exhilaration. As he left the room, a wave of disbelief struck him. He had not only delivered his pitch successfully, but he had also owned that moment. As he exited to the lobby, he found his way back to Ethan. It worked, they're interested. Jake's voice cracked with unbridled joy. Ethan said, proud but calm, as if he had known all along. You proved yourself today. Jake felt gratitude swell in his heart. I truly appreciate everything you've done today. Just remember this moment, Ethan replied, his gaze steady and sincere. You have to keep believing in yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. As they spoke, Jake reflected on how quickly he had gone from despair to victory. The warm glow of the lobby now felt like a celebration of his potential. More than just business, his experience today had reaffirmed the importance of connection and the impact one person could have on another's life. He stepped outside into the cool evening air, his heart lighter than it had been in months. The sun set behind him, a vibrant tapestry of colors stretching across the sky, a reminder of how quickly life could change. As he took a deep breath, savoring this moment of triumph, he promised himself that he would pay it forward. He wouldn't just remember Ethan's kindness, he'd ensure that he too would extend a hand to others in need. Every challenge holds the potential for growth, and today had opened his eyes to that truth. With determination propelling him forward, Jake felt ready to embrace the future. His journey was just beginning, and he would take every lesson with him, forging pathways to success and meaningful connections along the way. As he walked away from the hotel, he realized this wasn't just about securing funding. It was about cultivating relationships, believing in oneself, and most importantly, sharing kindness, much like Ethan did for him. The world was filled with opportunities waiting to unfold, and he planned to seize every moment. With that conviction in his heart, Jake smiled, knowing he was ready for whatever came next. The words hit Daniel like a sudden chill. He stood in the elegant lobby of the upscale hotel, surrounded by the polished marble floors and glistening chandeliers. The reception staff, all too busy with their smiling facades, seemed to float around him as if he was invisible. But the weight of their focus on him pressed down relentlessly. He echoed, the disbelief pulling his brows together. "Can you please check again?" He pulled out his phone, desperately swiping through his emails to find that reassuring message. It should have been simple, just a check-in. It should have assured him that he was about to step into the kind of night that could change everything. The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes and a forced smile, looked at her screen again, her fingers tapping lightly as a hint of panic crept into her demeanor. "I'm really sorry, but it looks like your payment didn't go through." Panic coiled tighter in Daniel's gut, "but I have a meeting in less than an hour." His heart hammered as he glanced around the busy lobby. Guests lounged by the bar, laughing and enjoying their drinks while he felt the world closing in around him. "I understand," she said gently, trying to keep her composure under the pressure. Just then, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. A bellhop stepped out, his impeccably pressed uniform commanding attention. He moved with confidence, and the air seemed to shift as he approached, instantly redirecting the tension. He asked, his voice calm yet assertive. The receptionist hesitated, looking to Daniel for guidance. "This guest reservation has been declined," she explained, sounding almost relieved to have someone else to share the weight. The bellhop tilted his head slightly, a gesture that conveyed both understanding and an unspoken promise. He asked Daniel Harper, he replied, feeling his expression soften at the bellhop's calm demeanor. "Let me take a look," the bellhop said, leaning over the counter with focus. As he navigated the screen, a soft determination glinted in his eyes. "It could change the course of my career. I'm here to secure funding for my startup, and this meeting means everything," Daniel explained, his voice rising, desperation creeping in. Just then, the bellhop smiled, lifting his gaze. "I'll do what I can to make sure you're taken care of." With that, he made his way down the hallway, his movements fluid and confident. Daniel watched him go, a sliver of hope piercing through the fog of despair he had been enveloped in just moments before. He couldn't help but think how people like Ethan, in the way the bellhop introduced himself, seemed to carry the power to change the atmosphere around them. The receptionist offered, her voice trailing off as Daniel shook his head, not wanting to dwell on the panic-stricken heart threatening to choke him. A few moments passed, and Daniel mentally went over his pitch, desperately preparing himself for the meeting that had already started to feel like a distant dream. But time slipped away like water between his fingers. Just then, the bellhop returned with an air of satisfaction. "Good news, Daniel," he announced, a light in his eyes. "We have a suite available for you." Daniel blinked, letting the words wash over him. "Really? Absolutely," Ethan replied confidently, handing him a key card. "The thing is, when challenges arise, it's about how you pivot and adjust." "Thank you so much," Daniel said, emotion thickening in his voice. "Just doing my job," Ethan said, tipping his hat slightly. As Daniel stepped into the elevator, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He pressed the button for the 4th floor, allowing a deep breath to escape him as the door slid closed. The shift in his mood was almost palpable. Maybe today would not end in disaster after all. When he entered the suite, the sheer luxury took his breath. The layout with stunning floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in soft, golden light. He couldn't help but smile at the sight. This was the kind of space that inspired creativity, that welcomed success. He quickly set up his laptop on the sleek desk, glancing out at the city, its skyline dotted with promise. Drawing in a deep breath, he allowed himself to absorb the gravity of the moment. The chaos of earlier faded, replaced by the steady beat of determination in his heart. He rehearsed his presentation, pushing through every detail, imagining the faces of potential investors as he delivered each point with conviction. He felt the adrenaline surge through him, fueling his passion as he prepared to share not just an idea, but a vision. Minutes slipped away like grains of sand in an hourglass as he honed his pitch. Before he realized it, it was almost time to head to the meeting. The clock was ticking, anticipation building as he paced back and forth, pushing his own doubts aside. Finally, he made his way back down to the lobby, determination driving each step. He spotted Ethan busy helping other guests, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude hit him. Daniel called, catching the bellhop's attention. "Thank you once again," Ethan replied, walking over, his smile encouraging. "You've prepared and you're ready for this moment." "I will," Daniel said with a firm nod. "I really appreciate your help." "At the end of the day, it's about how we help each other," Ethan said, his expression softening. "Everyone encounters challenges." With a last encouraging nod, Daniel felt that surge of hope again as he pushed through the front doors of the hotel and headed toward the conference room. The air buzzed with energy, and he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. Inside the boardroom, a diverse group of investors awaited him, each one with pens poised and expressions curious yet skeptical. Daniel took a deep breath, grounding himself in the reality of his preparation. Now was his time. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady. As he dove headfirst into his pitch, he could sense the room's atmosphere shifting. The board members lined in, their expressions morphing from skepticism to intrigue as he articulated not just the features of his app, but the emotional impact it would create for users. Daniel's passion pulsed in the air, and as he navigated through graphs, charts, and projections, he invited them into his vision. This wasn't just a pitch, it was a chance to bring people together, to build pathways to connection, the kind of connection that technology often obscured. When he finished his presentation, applause broke through the silence. The board members exchanged excited glances, the skepticism melting away like morning fog in the sunlight. "Daniel, that was quite impressive," one of them said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "We'd like to discuss next steps." Daniel exclaimed, adrenaline thrumming through him. The weight of the world hadn't crushed him, it had propelled him forward. As he exited the conference room, a wave of elation washed over him. He couldn't believe it. Not only had he done it, but he had left a mark. It was exhilarating, liberating, a feeling like being reborn. He headed back toward the lobby, desperate to find Ethan and share his good news. Spying him across the room, Daniel rushed over, a smile plastered across his face. "Ethan, they're interested." Ethan beamed at him, his pride palpable. "I knew you could do it. I honestly wouldn't be standing here without your help," Daniel said, his voice thick with gratitude. "You did the work, Daniel. You had it in you all along," Ethan replied, his calm demeanor reflecting wisdom. "And don't forget, every person you encounter could be standing on the edge of something important." Feeling a swell of emotion, Daniel nodded. "I promise I will." As they spoke, a connection blossomed, stronger than circumstances or chance. What had begun as a simple interaction in a busy lobby had transformed into a pivotal moment of mutual respect. Walking out into the city, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting warm, golden hues across the sky. The lights of the city began to twinkle on, mirroring the growing excitement within him. Daniel reflected on the day, the uncertainty, the fear, and then the triumph. It was a reminder that each challenge held the potential for something beautiful. It was a day that would forever etch itself into his memory, a lesson in resilience and the power of human connection. He walked forward, energized by the knowledge that kindness often lies in the small moments. He turned his face toward the future, feeling ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. After all, it was these experiences that forged stronger connections with others and ultimately shaped the course of his life. In that moment, he made a silent promise to himself, to be like Ethan, to provide a beacon of hope when others found themselves on the brink of despair. With that purpose in his heart, Daniel stepped into the night, ready to carve his own path and leave a mark on the world. Those words hung in the air, chilling the luxurious lobby of the Grand Hotel. Derek stood there with his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, staring blankly at the receptionist. The elegantly dressed guests around him floated in and out of sight, their laughter a sharp contrast to the rising panic within him. His voice just barely masked disbelief, a tremble breaking through as he struggled to comprehend how this could happen. "I received a confirmation email." The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes, offered a half-hearted smile. "I understand, but it appears there was an issue with your payment method. The system shows that your card was rejected." The words felt heavy in the air. No, I need to be here." Desperation clung to every syllable as he glanced around, feeling boxed in, the walls of the lobby seeming to close in on him. This was his moment, the pitch that could secure a major investment in his startup. As the anxiety coiled tighter in his gut, the elevator doors dinged open with a smooth chime. Out stepped a bellhop, his uniform crisp and polished, and in that moment he carried an air of composure that felt magnetic. Derek watched as the man surveyed the room, his demeanor calm and confident. The bellhop asked, directing his attention toward Derek, who felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. "This guest's reservation has been declined," the receptionist explained, her tone still lacking conviction. The bellhop looked directly into Derek's eyes. "Derek Williams," he replied, feeling an unfamiliar sense of trust in this stranger's presence. "Derek," he tilted his head slightly as if genuinely curious. "I'm here to present my startup to a group of investors." "This is an opportunity I can't afford to miss," Derek explained, feeling both vulnerable and hopeful. The bellhop nodded, a spark of determination flickering in his eyes. "Let's see what we can do." He turned back to the receptionist and leaned over the counter, his fingers moving deftly across the keyboard. Derek could feel his heart racing as he watched Ethan. He had seen the name tag dedicate his focus to the screen, tapping away with purpose. In that moment, it was as if the chaotic energy of the lobby transformed into a watchful silence, all eyes directed toward them, hoping for a solution. Ethan asked Derek, not looking up. Derek quickly retrieved it from his phone and showed it to him. The tension hung thick in the air. Moments felt like hours, and just when he thought everything might crumble, the bellhop straightened, a smile breaking through his focused expression. "I think I have a way to make this work," he said, glancing back at the receptionist. "I'll get a suite ready." Derek could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Absolutely," Ethan replied smoothly, handing him the paperwork. "We occasionally have late cancellations." Relief rushed over Derek like cold water on a hot day. "Thank you." His voice trembled slightly, a mixture of gratitude and hope spilling out. "Just keep your head clear for that meeting." "You're ready for this," Ethan said, waving him off as if it was nothing. With the overwhelming sense of gratitude still pulsing in his chest, Derek took the key card from the bellhop, feeling the weight of his worries begin to lift. He stepped toward the elevator, his heart settling a little as he pressed the button for the 4th floor. As the doors closed, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, imagining himself standing confidently before the investors. He envisioned their curious faces, eager for innovation, and suddenly the nerves transformed into excitement. Today was his moment, and he intended to seize it. When the elevator door slid open, he stepped into the suite. A wave of luxury washed over him, floor-to-ceiling windows, breathtaking city views, and furnishings that whispered elegance. For a fleeting moment, he let the stress melt away, allowing himself to simply breathe. He set up his laptop, heart racing as he prepared for his pitch. He practiced talking to himself, pacing around the room, channeling all the nervous energy into his words. The importance of this moment could not be overstated. It could mean financial freedom for him and the chance to build something meaningful. Time slipped away as he lost himself in preparation. Before long, he glanced at the clock and nearly jumped. He had only 10 minutes until the meeting. Panic surged again, taking hold as adrenaline propelled him into action. He grabbed his notes, straightening his tie, and made his way back to the elevator. Each ding of the buttons was a reminder of the minutes slipping by. He could feel his heart pounding in rhythm with the elevator's ascent. When the doors opened, he emerged into a sea of bustling guests. His determination blazed bright, cutting through the noise as he walked toward the conference room. As he approached the door, he felt the weight of expectations settling on his shoulders. Inside, a long, polished table awaited him, lined with stern faces. A few board members shuffled papers, others exchanged quiet whispers. This was it. He had arrived at the moment that would define his future. "Good afternoon," Derek began, attempting to steady his voice against the sharp stares of the investors. He zeroed in on the room's atmosphere, using every ounce of energy he had prepared. As he spoke about his vision, using examples and projections about how their funding would create exponential growth, he could see interest forming behind the guarded faces. Their eyes transformed from skepticism to intrigue. He navigated through his slides with ease, the rhythm of his voice gaining momentum. The more he spoke, the more confidence he drew from the bellhop's earlier support. It became infectious, drawing the investors in, making them lean closer with each word. Imagine an app that not only caters to user needs, but evolves with them. A personalized interface that grows alongside the consumer. "That's what we're offering," he asserted with growing enthusiasm, standing taller with each passing second. Questions began to flow as the investors engaged, their hesitation fading. One board member leaned forward. Derek answered confidently, delving into timelines and strategic partnerships, weaving his narrative with a spark of charisma. The energy in the room transformed. They were no longer a panel and a presenter, they were collaborators, allies on the brink of something great. As he wrapped up, applause erupted. Derek felt a wave of exhilaration surging through him, electrifying every nerve. He had done it. They were interested. Their enthusiasm surrounded him like a warm embrace. "Very impressive, Derek," a member of the board stated as he shook his hand, the genuine excitement tangible. "Thank you," Derek replied, dumbfounded with disbelief as he left the meeting room. He stepped into the lobby, feeling lighter than air, as if he could float away. This was exactly what he had fought for, what he deserved. Amid the joyful chaos, he spotted Ethan, the bellhop, standing tall by the front desk. He couldn't help but grin as he made his way over. "Ethan, you won't believe what just happened. They're interested." Ethan smiled back, that calm understanding radiating from him. "See, I knew you could do it. I truly owe you for everything, for believing in me when the odds were against me," Derek said, a wave of gratitude washing over him. "Just remember this moment and pay it forward," Ethan replied, his eyes reflecting a wisdom that resonated deep within Derek. Inspired by Ethan's words, Derek felt a surge of determination. He nodded, promising himself he would carry this moment with him. He would pay it forward, provide the support to others that Ethan had given him. With the sun setting behind the city, casting vivid colors across the skyline, Derek stepped outside, taking a deep breath. Everything felt right. His heart raced with excitement for the future. He had done it. He had turned his dreams into reality. Just then his phone buzzed in his pocket. Pulling it out, he glanced at the screen. It was a message from an unfamiliar number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the diner on 5th in 30 minutes. His heart dropped for a moment as confusion washed over him. Who could this be? What could be so urgent that it required immediate attention? As Derek stood there, the sunlight dipping below the horizon and shadows stretching around him, the weight of uncertainty returned. He glanced back at the hotel, Ethan still standing near the entrance, watching him with a knowing expression. In that moment, he realized this day was far from over. There was something stirring in the air, something he couldn't quite shake. With determination flooding his veins, he headed toward the diner, knowing he was on the cusp of another turning point. Little did he know, the gravity of what awaited him would shift everything he thought he knew about success, trust, and the very essence of his dreams.